In a world where the truth isn't always what it seems, four masters of real estate step forward to help put the E first in the word true. TREU. Treasure Coast Real Estate Unleashed. And now, here's the Fantastic Four of Real Estate with their host, Tom Platania.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another great edition of Treasure Coast Real Estate Unleashed here on WSDU 1450. TREU Radio, T-R-E-U Radio. Remember, we are putting the E first in education and in the word truth, so that, well, everybody out there is used to being told what the truth is. Believe me, I'm telling you the truth. Well, we get in trouble a lot of times when we rely on that. So what we decided to do is educate you so much that you know the difference between the truth or not. You know, there's all kinds of shows out there. To Catch a Contractor, CNBC's got all kinds of stuff. And it's because we don't educate ourselves ahead of time. So that's what the show is all about. And we have our Fantastic Four of Real Estate here to help educate you. And we have Farouk Ali, we have Scott McAllister, we have Carol Morgan, and Mr. Andrew Sesta.
Good morning, my friends.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So they're all here, and what they're here to do is to help educate you. But also, if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, well, they're here for that as well. And they're here for that as well. And what they'll do is you can go to TREUradio.com, and you have all their bios and all their information, their websites, their phone numbers. You can contact them, or you can just give us a call directly, and we'll guide you to the right person at 772-882-5700. Now, on today's show, we got a great show coming up for you today. Our topic is we're going to be talking about our foreign investors, or be like, what's going on with them? We have foreign investors that are coming into the United States, whether from Canada, from overseas. Well, there's all kinds of issues that potentially could be surrounding them with the purchase of investment properties and things of that nature. So we have all kinds of great information that we're going to be talking about today. And a little bit later on in the show, a few minutes later on in the show, we're going to have some special guests joining us on the phones with us. And we'll have Sarah Luff, who's the district sales manager with Fidelity National Title. And we also will have Pamela Moats, I hope I pronounced that correctly, yes. Who is a CPA with Moats and Associates. And if I butchered that, well, you could just be mad at me later. No problem. But so with that, let's just talk a little bit about why is this such an important subject, Farouk? Because I know you're the biggest person here with the international.
Well, right now, by you saying the biggest, I feel like this headphone is becoming too small right now because my head seems to be expanding. However, like I always say, I don't profess to know it all. That is why we have these wonderful people that is coming on today to help educate our audience, and we will pose some questions to them to assist us in doing this. It's so important, especially for our international buyers, to understand all the implications that it entails in buying a Florida property.
Yeah, if we could take their money and bring it into Florida,
it's not really a walk in the park.
No, it sounds like it from the information you said.
It can also be discouraging for international buyers as well, unless they are educated about the process.
Okay.
And that is what we were attempting to do today.
But there's a lot of new people getting into the industry, so this is something that if they're looking to do some overseas investment, they really need to listen up to the show
today. Of course.
Now, the rest of you, Scott and Carol and Andrew, have you guys had a lot of experience in the past? Have you come across a lot of international?
I've not had a lot. I mean, I had my first experience with international. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I've been dealing with people from Canada. So that's,
right. Okay.
I mean, my family's from Canada.
Yeah, that's international.
Yeah, so that's international. So I've done some of that. But my first real challenging one was about a month ago. And I had found out that these two people actually were here illegally.
Oh, that's not good.
And actually, they can buy a house in the United States as long as they're paying cash.
All right, that's
which
something
was
that
amazing. I mean,
that's
it's
something
like,
that we'll get
whoa, I
into.
didn't know that. So we're always learning.
Yeah,
Always
it's all right
new.
if you're illegal, just as long as you're giving us your
Yeah,
money.
yeah.
As long as you can source the funds,
Right.
Yeah.
that's what it
Right.
is. As
Yeah.
long as you can show
Show the
the
funds.
source
Yeah.
of the funds, where it's coming from, and a lot of times people do that because they're looking either to get a EB2 or EB5 visas,
Yeah.
and that's one way of
I see.
going
Right.
about it. But again, that is something for an attorney
Right.
Yeah.
to handle.
How about you, Andrew? Have you,
Yeah, I've sold a few homes to some foreign people that were using it for themselves, not necessarily for investment properties or stuff like that. I've dealt with a few that were looking for some property in Indian Town. There's some foreign
is that where Scott's got
investors.
that marijuana farm he just sold?
But definitely not on the level that Farouk, and I'm excited today because I'm coming here to get
Me
educated
too.
from not only Farouk but the two people that he has
Yeah.
coming online that have a lot of knowledge about it. So I actually have my notepad ready to take
Yeah.
some notes from you
Perfect.
guys.
Well, the whole thing about international buyers is whether you're buying a second home or investment property, it's the same thing you have to go through, and
Right.
it's good, especially for people who is buying second homes, to
Right.
know more because it becomes very complicated when they're ready to sell.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
why don't we go ahead and we'll introduce our guests who are on the phone lines with us. And first, we'll introduce Sarah Luff. Oh, good morning, Sarah.
Good morning.
Good
Thank
morning,
you.
my dear. How are you? Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it today.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah.
Wonderful. And then also we have Pamela Moats. Did I pronounce that correctly?
That's correct.
Oh,
Yes.
phew.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi,
Morning.
Pam. Did I confuse you guys enough yesterday?
No. We're delighted to be here.
Awesome.
We have a lot of knowledge that we're happy to pass on to you and to your call-in visitors. So we're looking forward to it.
All right.
Beautiful.
Well, real quick, let's just real quickly, Sarah, tell us just briefly about your involvement with some foreign buyers.
Well, Fidelity National Title is the world's largest title company. So we write in all 50 states, and we also write in 42 countries. So,
Wow.
yes, so not only do we have experience with international buyers here and sellers, but also in other countries, we actually write title insurance. So, I would say, unlike the other panelists on here, that we do quite a bit that involves the buying and selling for either investment, second homes, throughout the state of Florida for all types of international buyers and sellers.
Wonderful. And Pamela, tell us a little bit about what, as a CPA, your company, what type of involvement do you typically have with foreign buyers?
Well, I have quite a bit. We are Moats and Associates CPAs. We're located in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Lucky you.
For the last, and I've been in practice for about 25 years, but the last 12 years, I've devoted my part of the practice to working exclusively with foreign nationals. There's such a need for it anymore. I work with investors from 45 different countries, so I'm very familiar with all of the markets around the world. And there are a lot of very confusing things with whether they're buying an investment property, a rental property, a piece of land, a commercial property, and it does get real gray and real blurry. So I'm very happy to take questions today so that we can, maybe make a clearer picture of exactly what the IRS is going to require of them.
Oh, perfect.
And Pam, if I may also point it out, if there's anything we're missing in the questions that we're posing, we really would appreciate if you can educate us as well as things that we may not
Certainly.
pose to you.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, listener, there's a couple different topics that we're going to be touching base on, and if you'd like, you can go to TREUradio.com. Our phone lines are tied up this morning, but you can go to TREUradio.com, and you can type in your questions for any of our realtors here or any of our people on the phone, our guests. Type in your questions at any given time. Go to TREUradio.com, and right on you'll see the video of all the realtors in the studio. And then right to the right-hand side, you'll see a chat room, and just type in your questions. You don't have to log in or anything. Just type in your questions, and we'll be more than happy to answer them. Now, some of the things that we're going to be talking about is distressed property issues affecting foreign buyers and sellers, factors to consider in buying a business in Florida, and there's a thing called they got all these acronyms. FERPTA.
It's foreign investment in real property.
Sounds like something after you eat beans or something.
Tax Act.
Did you just FERPTA?
So Foreign Investment in Real Estate Property Tax Act. Okay, and then we have a cross-border trust, and then we're going to a little bit on Canadians moving into the United States, buying secondhand homes and investing. So we'll be talking briefly about that. So first
Sure,
question.
I'd like to. This is Farouk again. Can you explain to us how a seller can avoid the 10% withholding tax?
Is that for Pam or Sarah?
For Pam.
Okay. Well, how a foreign national seller can avoid the 10% withholding tax?
Uh-huh.
Well, the only way that you can have it waived is if the buyer of your property is going to use it as their primary residence and the sale price is less than $300,000. The way that you can get it reduced or eliminated is by applying to the IRS for a withholding certificate. So there's only really one way to have it waived. The 10% is there. The IRS has a very long arm when it comes to FERPTA. But what we do is, as soon as we know there's a contract with a foreign seller, we start our application process to get that withholding certificate from the IRS. And if I could just point out, I know you all just mentioned the acronym FERPTA, Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act. Just very, very briefly, this was enacted in 1980, and what it is, it's basically an anticipated capital gains tax. Because foreign taxpayers don't typically have to file tax returns, the IRS wants to make sure that they get any capital gains tax due them on the date of sale. So the 10% is 10% of the sales price of the property. At $200,000 property, the 10% withholding is $20,000. On the withholding certificate application, I actually make an anticipated calculation of what the capital gains tax will be, and then we apply for a reduction of that 10%. If they sell for a loss or it's a short sale type thing, then we apply for a full waiver of the 10%.
And Pam, that waiver, we have to apply for it 90 days prior for the certificate?
The buyer can apply or the seller can apply.
And
but
it's 90 days.
It's the seller that wants the withholding reduced.
And also, if I don't know if I'm right or not, but you have to live in a property for at least 50% of the time, and within 1 and 2 years of that time, if it's under 300,000.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
Now, Sarah, were
And
you
they
going to say
sign an
something?
affidavit. They have to sign an affidavit that they will live in the property at least 50% of the time over the next 2 years, and provide that affidavit to the closing agent, and then they can waive the FERPTA.
And that's at the time of closing.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
thanks.
Sarah,
Thank
you were going to say something?
I was going to say on, the closing end of it, when we get a contract and we realize that the seller is, an international seller, we immediately notify the buyer, and we let the buyer know that either they have two options. If it's under 300,000, they can sign that waiver that Pam was talking about, but that basically puts the responsibility on the buyer, saying that they have faith that the seller is going to file what they need to file to take care of those taxes. Or if not, then we would refer them to someone like Pam to start the FERPTA process.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, ladies, and when we come back, we're going to do what we call Hot Around Town, and then we'll come right back to you, ladies, so we can find out some more information about
Thank you.
Scott's FERPTA today. You're listening to Treasure Coast Real Estate Unleashed with Scott McAllister, Carol Morgan, Andrew Sesta, Farouk Ali. I'm Tom Platania, your host, and we will be right back.
Customer service and great rates. That's what you get with Atlantic Insurance Advisors. Remember, everyone's just one torrential downpour away from a flood. And with rates as low as $129 per year, why would you not get coverage? Call 772-233-4444 or email flood@atlanticinsurance.us and save hundreds on all your insurance needs. That's 772-233-4444, 233-4444 for Atlantic Insurance Advisors. Has a recent foreclosure, bankruptcy, or short sale spoiled your credit? Fidelity Funding may be able to help. Their hometown lenders are specially trained to work with your credit history to find the perfect loan program and get you back on track. Even if credit is no problem, Fidelity Funding offers many dynamic loan programs. Call Fidelity Funding on the Treasure Coast at 772-237-5211. They work day in and out with realtors in your community to find you the house you love. Call 237-5211 for Fidelity Funding. Every 13 seconds, a home intrusion is committed in the United States, with property loss totals in the billions. Take action today to prevent it from happening to you with ADT, protecting homes and businesses for more than 136 years. Protect Security is your authorized ADT dealer on the Treasure Coast. Call Richard Stratman today at 772-708-2691. Protect Security and ADT, offering peace of mind security 24/7. Call today, Protect Security, 708-2691. Are you selling your home? Wondering how you're ever going to move all your belongings? Well, don't wonder. Call the trusted moving professionals from Mr. Small Move. Their staff of full-time movers are ready to take the stress out of your next move. Mr. Small Move will safely pack, move, then place and assemble your belongings at your new location. So if you're moving, call the trusted professionals at Mr. Small Move. For a free estimate, call 283-5540. That's 772-283-5540 for Mr. Small Move. Dramatic change invites invigorating new energy. Let Decorating Den Interiors create a dramatic change in your home's decor. They'll create a look that's important to you. Begin your home's gorgeous transformation by calling Decorating Den Interiors on the Treasure Coast at 692-8589. Visit their waterfront design studios on Southeast Osceola Street, downtown Stuart, and online at stewartdecorator.com. When you buy a home without a housemaster inspection, things can break down without warning. When things break down without warning, you get angry. When you get angry, you may commit acts of random violence. When you commit acts of random violence, you could do hard time. Don't do hard time. Call Housemaster for your home inspection needs. 772-336-2111 or visit them on the web, stlucy.housemaster.com. You're listening to WSTU Stewart.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Treasure Coast Real Estate Unleashed, or TREU Radio. Don't forget to go to TREUradio.com. Don't forget to also go to our Facebook, TREU Radio, Treasure Coast Real Estate Unleashed. We're on Twitter. We're all over the place. So don't forget to send us and check out those sites, because we're always talking about what the next subjects are going to be on our show. And we kind of had a quick conversation during the break, and we said to ourselves that, well, we like Sarah and Pam so much that we're going to push the hot around town aside for right now. And we want to hear, you ladies just have a wealth of knowledge, and we want to be sponges today. And we want to hear everything we possibly can from you ladies. So we're just going to dive right back into questions for Sarah from the Fidelity Title, and from Pam with Motz & Associates CPA. Moats and Associates, excuse me.
Moats.
I apologize.
You had it right the first time.
I got my Motz.
Sarah, Pam, this is Scott. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Excellent. My mother and I did a lot of business internationally in Boca Raton in the late 80s and into the 90s. And and I've been out of the business for the past decade. What are the really big changes that have come about internationally in the past decade?
Well, there's been a lot of changes just in the real estate market, as a whole. But for international-wise, we're noticing that a bunch of the foreign investors came in and bought during the peak time. Mm-hmm. So first, when they're selling, typically it's more of the paperwork of not having to withhold and that types of things. We have more investors from all over coming in, and then of course we also have the hedge funds that are coming in, also investing in Florida real estate. So it's probably a more diversified pool of investors since the time whenever you were buying.
Yeah, I hear a lot more about the hedge funds coming in. That seems to be a big topic.
Oh yeah, and Florida's still a hot market for them because, and for any investor, because our market has not rebounded as quickly because we are a judicial foreclosure state. So we have in the pipeline still millions of properties to be foreclosed on. Short sales are still happening. They're not as rampant, but they are still happening. Where other areas where it's not a judicial state, they've pushed those foreclosures through, and those real estate markets have rebounded. So it's not as a hot market for lower priced inventory as we have here in Florida. So it still is very much a desirable area for international and hedge funds to buy.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Andrew Susta. How are you guys today?
Very good.
Thanks for joining us. This kind of question is open to all three of you, actually, Farouk and you two. How does the financing come to play with some of these foreign buyers? Are they able to get financing through here or financing through a bank in their country? That I'd like to really know about that.
Guys, I'm going to take this. However, what has happened a few years ago, it was so difficult for foreign international buyers to actually get financing.
Right.
So most of the transaction was all cash.
Cash, and that's what I've
But,
dealt
yeah,
with.
but today it has changed tremendously. The international buyer, because they're able to get international credit reports so easily as well, that with 40% down, 50% down, a lot of banks.
So the banks are starting
yes,
to lend to foreign
there's
nationals.
quite a few banks that really specialize
Okay.
in dealing with international buyers.
So they have a larger amount of money that they're putting down on them then.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah,
good to know.
Yeah. Pam, I have another question for you. After the 10% is held, what is the process of the seller being able to recoup all of the money or part of it? What is the process they have to go through?
Okay. When the money will be withheld, and the closing agent will hold that 10% in their escrow account once we let them know that we're applying for the withholding certificate. So the money is going to stay with the title company. I'll apply for the withholding certificate. When the IRS comes back with the approved certificate, I send that to the title company, and say, for example, it was $20,000. That was the 10% withheld. The IRS comes back and says, well, we are calculating the tax at $1,000. The title company will send the $1,000 to the IRS. The other $19,000 can then immediately be released to the sellers. Now, there's actually a second step to that. Because most sales take place sometime during the tax year, our tax year being the calendar year January through December, we're only calculating the capital gains tax due as of that date and time. Now, they are still required to file a tax return after the end of the tax year, reporting the sale of the property. If it happens to be a rental property, they're going to report their income and expenses. Now, typically, we can get the remainder of the money that was withheld back for them when they file a tax return. First of all, because they have their personal exemption that we're going to reduce the capital gains tax by. For 2013, their personal exemption was $3,900. So if they had, $2,500 of capital gain, and they have a $3,900 personal exemption, there's no tax due, and we can get the remaining $1,000 back for them. So there's really kind of a two-step process, and I really try to tell my sellers, this is only part of the money that we're getting released to you now. We'll file a tax return for you next year. If you've got an investment property, we're also going to include any mortgage interest and property taxes that were paid on that property while you owned it. That's going to further reduce the capital gain. We're going to include any improvements made to the property. That's going to reduce the capital gain. So in most instances, I'm seeing that they're getting a release of their money with the withholding certificate and then a further release of any money that was withheld when they file their tax return.
And that's about typically a 90-day process, you're saying?
Well, it depends. Like Sarah was mentioning earlier, we still have a lot of short sales and a lot of foreclosure type sales going through. When I have those type, when I know that there's really no capital gain on the sale, I can put it through as a hardship. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I work with certain agents, and I can usually get those turned around in maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Wow, okay.
If they owe a lot of money, then they can sometimes take up to 90 days. Just because, for whatever reason, they don't rush on those.
Sarah, do you have any statements to make about that question?
The only thing that we do not do at Fidelity National Title is we do not hold the FIRSA withholding. We do not hold that. We send that typically back to the accountant to hold.
Okay.
And Sarah, as we have you, what are you seeing normally? How people are international buyers are taking title to properties? Are they taking it in their names, or they're doing LLCs?
In their names.
Most times in their name.
Them in their names.
Good.
Is there any benefit one way or the other?
No. I mean, the only benefit would just be the same as, and that's probably more a question for tax reasons for Pam, but we will handle the transaction of if they're buying as an LLC or, a corporation or an individual person. We'll handle it the same way, except for we have to see the bylaws and make sure that the LLC is still in good standing. But from our end, from a title perspective, there's no benefit either way. But maybe Pam could speak a little more to if there's financial reasons to do it that way.
Pam, for the purchasers, whether it's investment properties or second homes, do you recommend that they apply for the I-10 number?
I do. And again, that's another acronym, I-10, which is Individual Taxpayer Identification Number.
And thank you for that.
It's very, very similar to our Social Security number, but it's the foreign tax number that they'll use for their banking, for all their tax documents that they file with the IRS. And that tax number is actually critical when they sell their property, because in order to apply for the withholding certificate, they must have an I-10. And
Good.
also
At least
their
I know I'm
buyer
doing
must
something
have
right.
an I-10. I'm sorry?
I said I'm glad I'm doing something right.
Yeah, well, and also the buyer must have an I-10. So if I get a case where, I'm doing a withholding certificate for my seller, and I contact the buyer to get their information, which is required on the application, if they don't have an I-10, then I automatically apply for one for them too.
Right, and you assist buyers with acquiring that I-10 number.
Yes,
Awesome.
And they'll need it to open a U.S. bank account. So, I always recommend, as soon as you buy that piece of property and you're going to open a U.S. bank account, let's get the I-10 applied for. That way you'll have it, and you don't have to worry about it to delay, later on.
Is it a good thing for have them apply for it prior to actually purchasing the property, or wait until they take title?
Well, they have to show a valid tax reason for even getting an I-10. And that's why I said, if they were going to buy a piece of property, I would recommend that they even open their U.S. bank account first, because I can use a letter from the bank stating that they've opened an individual deposit account as my reason for getting them an I-10. So, just owning a piece of property in and of itself isn't necessarily a valid tax purpose unless it's a rental property.
And what is the reasoning for them to be able to not pay the 10% if someone, the buyer, like it's predicated on the buyer? It's kind of confusing to me. Why would that make a difference whether it's they're taxed or not? What's the advantage?
If the buyer is going to live in the property?
Yeah, because you said that if a buyer is going to live in the property and it's their primary residence and they sign off on it, the seller doesn't have to pay the 10%. I've had that happen a couple of times. But what's the reasoning behind that? What's the difference if it's someone that's living in the property, or let's say someone that's using it as a second home, or an investor that buys it from them? What would make them the difference?
And Sarah, you can jump in too if you have answers to any of these questions.
That I'm not sure why they came up with that rule. That would be an IRS rule.
Right. I was just wondering if there was any kind of reasoning behind that, or what was the mindset? What's the difference?
Yeah, there doesn't appear to be a specific explanation for it. That's just one of the waivers under the Internal Revenue Code that they allowed for not having FERPTA. If
Right.
the next person is going to buy it as their primary residence.
How does that affect the buyers? I mean, you say the onus can come back on the buyers to pay it. So say if there's $1,500 in tax money that's owed because there was no money collected, and the buyers now have to be responsible for that, how does that come? Does that come by a lien to them, or do they have to pay that?
Well, the 10% withholding is always the requirement of the buyer, regardless of the situation. That's why when we do the application for the withholding certificate, we have to have the buyer's information because it's the buyer's responsibility
Right,
to
but
withhold.
what I'm saying is when you have a foreign investor who owns a home that sells the house,
Right.
that's where I'm confused. I mean, if they're going to waive that for the foreign investor when he has sold a house, why does the buyer who is going to reside in the house have to absorb that?
Well, they're going to file an affidavit with the title company, and it's going to be an affidavit saying I'm going to live in this property as my primary residence. This is my name, address, my social security number. Under penalties of perjury, I'm filing this affidavit. So if they were not truthful and they didn't withhold, on the seller, then the IRS is going to come back to them. And
But at
say,
no time
okay,
is the buyer responsible for the tax. It's the seller, correct?
the buyer is responsible for making sure the tax has been withheld on the seller.
Right, withheld. But I mean, as far as paying it, the seller's
If-
paying.
If and this is something new that's come up this year on the withholding certificates, if say I have a foreign seller, they purchased the property from a foreign buyer. If they, from an original foreign seller, so if the withholding wasn't taken out when they bought the property, they're now responsible for the tax from when they purchased the property and from when they sold the property. So if you're a buyer, you need to find out who the seller is of that property, because if for some reason a title company doesn't withhold, then you become responsible for the tax.
Now,
That is correct.
Sarah, is that
Yeah,
something
so it's
that
very, very, and that's why Sarah mentioned, as soon as she finds out on a contract that she's got a foreign seller, she immediately notifies the buyer to
Well-
let them know.
And how would the buyer know it's a foreign seller?
Right.
Is the title company going to tell them that?
Does that
Who's
have to
going
be
to tell them that?
disclosed?
do you disclose that, Sarah?
There is a FERPA section on the contract, and
The sales
also,
contract.
yes, we will inform the buyer if we find out that it is a foreign national seller.
Okay.
Now, does
Do a
the
complete
title insurance policy cover that if it comes back to the buyer? Is that a because
No.
no, they don't.
No, it does not. That's why it's important that you work with a title company that also knows what they're doing when it comes to FERPTA.
Right.
And also a realtor that knows the whole picture basically of what's going on to help at least
Exactly.
Well,
guide you in the right
A realtor
direction.
that can lead the buyer and the
Yeah.
seller
The
in the
right
right
direction.
direction.
Right
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah, because if somebody who has no experience in international foreign buyers and whatnot and just jumps on this thinking, oh, I'm gonna land a heyday, boy, I tell you, I feel sorry for their client.
Right.
That-
Exactly.
that is why
and
this-
I've seen it happen. I've
Yeah.
seen it happen multiple
So
times
have we.
where all of a
Yeah.
sudden the buyer.
I can imagine. I can imagine. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and take our next quick break, and we're going to come back. We still got all
Thanks,
kinds.
guys.
I actually got a question for Sarah when we come back for break, but you're listening to Treasure Coast Real Estate Unleashed, True Radio. We're here with Andrew Sesta, Farouk Ali, Scott McAllister, Carol Morgan. I'm Tom Platini, your host. Don't forget to go to TrueRadio.com. We'll be right back.
Customer customer service, and great rates. That's what you get with Atlantic Insurance Advisors. Remember, everyone's just one torrential downpour away from a flood. And with rates as low as $129 per year, why would you not get coverage? Call 772-233-4444 or email flood@atlanticinsurance.us and save hundreds on all your insurance needs. That's 772-233-4444, 233-4444 for Atlantic Insurance Advisors. Are you selling your home? Wondering how you're ever going to move all your belongings? Well, don't wonder. Call the trusted moving professionals from Mr. Small Move. Their staff of full-time movers are ready to take the stress out of your next move. Mr. Small Move will safely pack, move, then place and assemble your belongings at your new location. So if you're moving, call the trusted professionals at Mr. Small Move. For a free estimate, call 283-5540. That's 772-283-5540 for Mr. Small Move. Every 13 seconds, a home intrusion is committed in the United States, with property loss totals in the billions. Take action today to prevent it from happening to you with ADT, protecting homes and businesses for more than 136 years. Protect Security is your authorized ADT dealer on the Treasure Coast. Call Richard Stratman today at 772-708-2691. Protect Security and ADT, offering peace of mind security 24/7. Call today, Protect Security, 708-2691. Dramatic change invites invigorating new energy. Let Decorating Den Interiors create a dramatic change in your home's decor. They'll create a look that's important to you. Begin your home's gorgeous transformation by calling Decorating Den Interiors on the Treasure Coast at 692-8589. Visit their waterfront design studios on Southeast Osceola Street, downtown Stuart, and online at stewartdecorator.com. Has a recent foreclosure, bankruptcy, or short sale spoiled your credit? Fidelity Funding may be able to help. Their hometown lenders are specially trained to work with your credit history to find the perfect loan program and get you back on track. Even if credit is no problem, Fidelity Funding offers many dynamic loan programs. Call Fidelity Funding on the Treasure Coast at 772-237-5211. They work day in and out with realtors in your community to find you the house you love. Call 237-5211 for Fidelity Funding. When you buy a home without a house master inspection, things can break down without warning. When things break down without warning, you get angry. When you get angry, you may commit acts of random violence. When you commit acts of random violence, you could do hard time. Don't do hard time. Call Housemaster for your home inspection needs. 772-336-2111 or visit them on the web, stlucy.housemaster.com. You're listening to WSTU Stuart.
All right, welcome back to Treasure Coast Real Estate Unleashed. I'm Tom Platania, your host. TREUradio.com is the place to go if you'd like to watch this show again or any of the archive shows that we've ever done. You can also email us, ask us any questions that'll go right to the our Fantastic Four of Real Estate, Andrew Sesta, Scott McAllister, Farouk Ali, and Carol Morgan. And they can answer your questions directly to the best of their knowledge or to guide you in the right direction to people like Sarah and Pamela to help with questions that really need to be handled by licensed people in those areas. So back now, Sarah, I got a question for you. I'm new in the real estate industry. I'm just still wet behind the ears as an agent. Is there a difference in titling between a foreign investor and somebody who lives here in the United States? What are the differences?
There is no difference.
None. Okay.
There is no difference. So, like, the only difference is when they're selling it, the first rule.
Okay.
Sarah, this is Carol Morgan. I have a question regarding the foreclosures and the short sales out there.
Okay.
If an investor buys a property and it goes into foreclosure or short sale, and there's a deficiency judgment filed, how is that handled?
If what? No, sorry, I missed that.
There was a deficiency judgment has been filed by the bank.
If
The
it's
sale didn't satisfy the price that was owed to the bank, so there's a deficiency judgment which they've settled on. How is that handled by the buyer who buys the house and or the investor who bought the house
Oh.
originally?
Well, if it went back into the bank's REO pool, the bank would be responsible before they sold that property.
To do what?
If there's yes, right. If you're buying it at the courthouse steps as an investor, you buy it as is. So the
Yeah, but I'm not
things like
talking about an investor buying. I'm talking about a homeowner who wants to reside in the property buying it. How is that going to be satisfied?
it would have to be well. So are you talking about once it goes into the REO pool?
Yeah,
The
what
bank
we've
would
got
be-
we've got a foreign investor who's bought a house here, and it now has got into foreclosure, and the bank, well, the bank owns it, but on a foreclosure, on a say it's on a short sale, the bank won't release it without a deficiency judgment. Who's
Right.
going to satisfy that? Does the investor satisfy that, or does it have to be satisfied through the sale? You know, the foreign investor who owned the house originally, the seller.
No, it would have to be. It depends on who owns the property that's trying to convey it to the next person. The seller is responsible for clearing up any deficiencies before they can convey that property to the buyer.
Okay, so that holds true the same that if an American citizen has a short sale, it's the same as
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. That's interesting.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Now, Pam, what about on the financial side? Besides the 10%, are there other fees that a foreign buyer would end up absorbing later on down the road for tax purposes at the end of the year after the sale is done?
Well, if they own the property and it's just a personal use property, they're using it for a second home or it's a piece of land or that type of thing, the only tax that they would have to worry about is just their capital gains tax. If they are using it as a rental property, whether it's a long-term rental property or a vacation-type rental property, then they will have to report that income on an annual tax return.
Okay.
But they can also deduct all of their expenses. So, usually when they own a rental property, between depreciation, travel costs, mortgage interest, property taxes, those types of things, we pay no tax while they're renting the property.
And the 10% FERPTA, that's something completely separate from the capital
That's
gains.
completely separate because that's a capital gains tax on the sale of the property, as opposed to, an income tax on any income that they earn while they own it.
Oh, okay. That makes.
But I did want to point out, someone brought up LLCs and whether people are buying the properties through LLCs.
Yeah.
And they have gotten very popular from what I've seen. I get a lot of questions on should I buy the property as a limited liability company or as an individual. And there is a difference because the limited liability company, as we know, is the legal structure, and that protects them and their personal assets from lawsuits. And if you set it up either as a single member LLC or a multi-member LLC, will determine how it's going to be taxed. And I can go into further details with people as they ask individual questions, but one of the things that they can do is set it up as a corporation or a domestic corporation through the LLC. When you have a domestic corporation, there's no FERPTA because it's considered a U.S. domestic entity.
Mm.
So some people have been going that route just to eliminate the FERPTA. But then there's other tax filing requirements with corporate tax returns and that kind of thing. But I did want to point out that the LLC structure has gotten very popular for the legal limited liability and different tax structures that we can set up for foreign investors.
Pam, this is Farouk. I had posed that question. The reason why is that I've been seeing that even with some of the properties that I managed that was bought in the individual's name, and they own several properties. Now we're talking about setting up LLCs, and you brought up a very important point here, whether it should be a multiple or a single LLC. And I guess that will be a conversation for us when I come back from Toronto. But I have another question on, and you've dealt with a lot of Canadians buying properties in Florida. One of the things that I'm coming up against quite a bit for years now is the cross-border trust and the implication of taxes that they pay taxes in the United States as well as in Canada. Is there any light you can shine on that to explain?
Was that for Sarah or Pam?
Both of you. It could be divided up in two because
Okay.
I think Sarah, in terms of title and what they're doing, and Pam, for you, how you see it's being handled in terms of the tax aspect of it when the Canadians have to pay, taxes here in the United States as well back home.
Exactly. Well, since you've asked this question, I'll go ahead and answer it. Then we'll let Sarah talk about the title of it. When you have a trust, and I do have several Canadian clients that purchase their properties through a family-type trust, the trust is the entity in the structure that's owning the property. But for tax purposes, the individual trustees are actually the taxpayers. So, for example, if you have a husband and wife that are the trustees of a trust, they're going to leave the property to their children should they perish. Then the husband and wife are actually going to be filing the tax returns, not the trust. The trust doesn't come into play unless the trustees have passed away. So we get tax ID numbers for the two trustees. They file their own tax returns. We have a very, very good tax treaty with Canada. So if they do pay any tax here in the U.S., they get a tax credit in Canada, and they don't. There's no double taxation.
Right. All right.
So, and they can also take most of their expenses from our U.S. tax returns and put them on their Canadian tax returns to get the benefit on both sides.
All right, we've got just a couple more minutes. Sarah, just a real quick rebuttal to that, and then what I'd like to do from both you ladies real quick is also get your information with phone numbers in case somebody would like to contact you. So Sarah, real quick rebuttal on that of what you go through with those.
Right. The same thing, like I said about the LLCs, when somebody wants to close in a trust, we handle it the same exact way that we would handle a regular buyer or seller. We just need to review the trust documents and make sure that the trustees sign and that type of stuff. But as far as the title perspective, it doesn't matter how they convey the property as long as we have the correct documentation.
Perfect. All right, Sarah, so give us a place, the phone numbers or emails or websites, whatnot, where folks can contact you if they would like to deal with your business, with your company, with anything to do with foreign buyers or sellers.
Sure, absolutely. Well, in the Stewart, Port St. Lucie area, it would be our Chelsea Title Company, which is a division of Fidelity National Title. And their phone number is 772-335-3250.
Okay, one more time.
It's 772-335-3250.
All right, wonderful.
And they can always email myself at Sarah, S-A-R-A, .luff, L-U-F-F, at snf.com.
All right, perfect. And Pamela, real quick, we got 3 minutes left. Real quick, how can we contact your company?
You can contact me at area code 386-760-3083. Just ask for Pamela Modes, and I will call you right back and give you my email, and we can be in contact.
Sounds great. Motes and Associates and Fidelity Title is great. We're gonna go. We have to go to Scott here. Scott, what do we got coming up on the next show?
Well, next week we're going to discuss something that's very controversial, but also very passionately discussed here in the Treasure Coast, and that's going to be the All Aboard Florida, the high-speed rail that's coming through.
Okay.
There's a lot of passion on both sides of it, so we're going to investigate, kind of try to come up with some answers, and I encourage anyone to send questions to our Facebook page at Treasure Coast Real Estate Unleashed, and we'll try to get to any of those questions and maybe have some little bit of fun with that next week.
Sarah and Pamela, thank you so much. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
ladies.
you coming on today. Thanks again. I'll be in touch.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, ladies. All right. Well, another great show. I tell you what, we could go on and on for hours and hours about that topic because I mean, it doesn't even. I don't even think I don't know much about it, but it sounds like we didn't even scratch the surface on the amount of questions. And from what I watch CNBC every day, and they weren't talking very good about the real estate market today on there, and they were talking a little bit about why home sales are new home buyers are down dramatically. But what they were comparing them to is in reality when the housing market back before 2006, when things were on more of an even keel, that actually home prices are up 50% from at that point in time, and that's what's really. And then also, back then, I mean, you just had to have a pulse to buy a house. Now you got 20% down, and there's all these other things. So they're really trying to beat down what's going on. But so pay attention to that. But you're here, Treasure Coast Real Estate Unleashed, and we're going to talk about those topics every week. And remember, Zig Ziglar quote of the day: "The choice to have a great attitude is something that nobody or no circumstance can take from you." All right, you're listening to Treasure Coast Real Estate Unleashed. We'll be back next Thursday. Farouk Ali, Scott McAllister, Carol Morgan, Andrew Sesta, and I'm Tom Platini, your host. Have a fabulous weekend.